The stagecoach lurched to a stop in a cloud of dust, and Willa Zimmerman pressed her gloved hand against the window, her heart hammering as she searched the horizon for her first glimpse of the ranch that was to be her new home. Instead of the promised homestead, however, she saw only blackened timber and ash where buildings should have stood, the skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving cattle ranch reaching toward the Nevada sky like charred fingers. Her stomach dropped as the driver helped her down, his weathered face grim as he pointed toward a solitary figure standing amid the ruins, a tall man with shoulders slumped in defeat. "That would be Zachary Lawson, miss," the driver said quietly. "Appears you have gotten here at a difficult time." Willa clutched her carpet bag tighter, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her traveling dress as she took in the devastation. She had traveled all the way from Boston, leaving behind a life of servitude as a seamstress to marry a man she had never met, hoping for something better than the drudgery and loneliness that had defined her 23 years. The letters Zachary had sent over the past 6 months had painted such vivid pictures of life on his ranch outside Reno, Nevada, describing the house he had built with his own hands, the corrals where he broke horses, the wide open spaces where a person could breathe freely. Now it was all gone, reduced to ash and memory. The man turned at the sound of the stagecoach, and Willa saw his face clearly for the first time. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of storm clouds. Soot streaked his face and shirt, and his hands were wrapped in makeshift bandages. He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched emotions flicker across his features, confusion giving way to recognition, and then to something that looked like pure anguish. "Miss Zimmerman," he said, his voice rough as he approached, "you should not have come. I sent a telegram 3 days ago telling you not to come." "I never received any telegram," Willa replied, finding her voice despite the shock still coursing through her. "I left Boston nearly 2 weeks ago." "What happened here?" Zachary ran a bandaged hand through his hair, leaving more soot in its wake. "Lightning struck 4 nights back. The barn went up first, then spread to the house and the other outbuildings before I could do much to stop it. Lost most of my horses, all my winter provisions, everything." He gestured helplessly at the ruins behind him. "I have been living in what is left of the storage shed. It is no place for a lady. You should take the next stage back to wherever you came from. I cannot offer you anything now. I do not even know if I can rebuild this place." The stagecoach driver cleared his throat. "I will be heading back to Reno in about an hour, miss, if you want to return to town. There is a boarding house there where you could stay while you figure out what to do next." Willa looked between the two men, then back at the destruction spread before her. She had left Boston with her entire life savings of $47, enough to start fresh, but not enough to support herself for long in a strange town. More than that, something in Zachary's eyes called to her, the same loneliness and determination she had seen in her own reflection for years. She thought of the letters they had exchanged, his words full of hope and plans for the future, her careful responses sharing her dreams of a real home, a family, a place to belong. "No," she said firmly. "I came here to marry you and help build a life together. The fact that we must rebuild from nothing does not change that, unless you have changed your mind about wanting a wife." Zachary stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign tongue. "Miss Zimmerman, you do not understand. I have nothing left. The only reason I am still standing here instead of in town is pride and stubbornness. Any sensible woman would run from this situation as fast as her feet could carry her." "Then perhaps I am not sensible," Willa replied, setting her carpetbag down on the dusty ground. "But I am determined, and I am done running from difficult situations. If you will have me, I will stay and we will rebuild this ranch together. If you do not want me, say so plainly, but do not send me away because you think I cannot handle hard work and hardship. I have handled both my entire life." Something shifted in Zachary's expression, a spark of hope kindling in those storm cloud eyes. "You are serious. You would actually stay here in these conditions and help me try to salvage this disaster." "I am perfectly serious," Willa said. "Though I should mention I know very little about ranching. I am a seamstress by trade, but I learn quickly and I am not afraid of work." The stagecoach driver shook his head with a bemused smile. "Well, I will be going then. Good luck to you both. Something tells me you are going to need it." He tipped his hat and climbed back onto his perch, leaving Willa standing alone with her soon-to-be husband amid the ashes of his dreams. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Willa studied Zachary more carefully now, noting the exhaustion in his face, the defeat in his posture. He looked like a man who had been fighting a losing battle for days, and her heart went out to him despite having just met him. She had expected this meeting to be awkward, two strangers coming together through correspondence and necessity, but she had not expected it to happen like this. "We should get married right away," Zachary said finally. "There is a preacher in Reno. If we are going to do this, we should do it properly. Then I need to show you what is left and we can figure out where to start." "That seems practical," Willa agreed, trying to ignore the way her stomach fluttered with nerves. She had imagined her wedding day many times over the years, but never quite like this. They walked together to where Zachary had hobbled his horse, a sturdy gray gelding that had survived the fire by virtue of being out to pasture when it started. He helped Willa into the saddle with surprising gentleness considering his bandaged hands, then swung up behind her. She felt the solid warmth of him at her back as they rode toward town, his arms bracketing her as he held the reins. "I am sorry," he said quietly as they traveled. "This is not how I wanted you to arrive. I had the house all ready, had supplies laid in for winter, was planning to court you properly for at least a week before we married. Now you are getting none of that." "We are both getting something different than we expected," Willa replied, "but that does not mean it cannot still work out. Sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. You are an optimist, I see." "I am a realist who chooses to look for possibilities rather than dwell on problems," she corrected. "There is a difference." She felt him chuckle, the sound vibrating through his chest into her back. "I think I am going to like you, Willa Zimmerman, even if you are a bit crazy for staying." Reno was busier than Willa had expected, a growing town benefiting from its position along the railroad and the continued mining operations in the surrounding mountains. They stopped first at a general store where Zachary purchased basic supplies with what money he had left, explaining that he had been planning to sell his horses to cover winter expenses, but the fire had destroyed most of that income. Willa contributed half of her savings without being asked, which earned her a long, unreadable look from Zachary. "You should keep your money," he said, "in case this does not work out and you need to leave." "It will work out," Willa said firmly. "And we need supplies more than we need my emergency fund." The preacher was a kind-faced man named Reverend Thomas, who asked no questions about their soot-stained clothing or hasty wedding. He read the vows in a small church that smelled of pine and beeswax, and Willa repeated the words that bound her life to this stranger's, meaning every syllable. When Zachary kissed her to seal the marriage, it was brief and chaste, but his lips were warm and his eyes held a promise of better things to come. They were husband and wife now, for better or worse. The ride back to the ranch felt different, weighted with the reality of what they had just done. Willa kept stealing glances at the wedding band Zachary had purchased from the general store, a simple gold band that felt heavy on her finger. She wondered what he was thinking, whether he regretted his decision to accept her help, whether he thought her foolish for staying. "Tell me about the fire," she said as the ruins came back into view. "What exactly happened?" Zachary sighed, the sound heavy with weariness. "It has been a dry summer. A thunderstorm rolled through 4 nights ago, lots of lightning but barely any rain. One strike hit the barn dead center. By the time I realized what was happening and got out there, the whole structure was engulfed. The wind was blowing toward the house, carrying embers. I managed to get my breeding mare and her foal out, along with 3 of my other horses, but the rest either died in the barn or I had to turn them loose. Some might come back, but I doubt it. They were half wild anyway, probably happy to be free. And your hands, how did those get burned?" "Trying to save what I could from the house. I got some tools out, a few personal items, but the heat was too intense. The whole place went up like kindling." He paused. "I built that house myself over the course of 2 years. Every board, every nail, and it was gone in less than an hour." Willa heard the grief in his voice and wished she knew what to say to comfort him. Instead, she placed her hand over his where it rested on the saddle horn, a simple gesture of solidarity. He turned his hand to squeeze hers gently in return. The storage shed he had been living in was barely standing, a rough structure that had been meant to hold equipment, not people. Inside, Willa found a bedroll, some scattered tools, and a crate serving as a makeshift table. It was, without question, the most primitive dwelling she had ever seen, worse even than the cramped attic room she had rented in Boston. "I know it is not much," Zachary said, hovering in the doorway as if embarrassed. "I have been sleeping here and taking meals in town, but that is not sustainable long term. We need to start rebuilding, but I am not entirely sure where to begin. The barn needs to come first because winter is coming and the horses need shelter, but we also need a house to live in." Willa set down her carpetbag and turned to survey their surroundings with a practical eye. "We need shelter, food, and a plan. Let us tackle those in order. This shed can house us both for now if we weatherproof it and add some basic furnishings. I can sew canvas to cover the gaps in the walls, and we can build a proper stove area for heat and cooking. Once we have stable living quarters, we can work on the barn. The horses can survive outdoors for a while longer if necessary, but we cannot work efficiently if we are cold and hungry." Zachary blinked at her, then a slow smile spread across his face. "You really are something, Willa Lawson. Most women would be in tears by now. I cried plenty when my parents died and left me orphaned at 16, Willa said matter-of-factly. "I learned that tears do not fix problems, action does. Now, show me what tools you have and what materials we can salvage from the ruins. We are losing daylight." They worked until the sun set, sorting through the devastation to find anything usable. Willa was surprised by how much could be recovered once they started looking. Nails could be pulled from charred boards and straightened for reuse. Metal fixtures had survived the fire. Tools with wooden handles had burned, but the metal parts were intact. Zachary's forge had protected some items stored nearby. It was grim, dirty work, and Willa's traveling dress was soon as filthy as Zachary's clothes, but she felt a strange satisfaction in the labor. As darkness fell, Zachary built a fire outside the shed and prepared a simple meal of beans and coffee using supplies from town. They sat together on a salvaged log, eating in companionable silence while stars emerged overhead. The September night was cool but not cold, and the fire cast warm light over their makeshift camp. "I should tell you about myself," Zachary said eventually. "Since we are married now and you barely know anything about me beyond what was in my letters." "I would like that," Willa replied, wrapping her hands around her tin cup of coffee. "I am 28 years old, originally from Missouri. My father was a farmer. My mother died when I was young. I came west 5 years ago looking for opportunity and ended up working as a horse trainer for a big ranch up north. Saved every penny for 3 years until I could afford to buy this land and start my own operation. I have been here 2 years, building it up from nothing." He paused. "Or I had been building it up. Now I am starting from nothing again." "Not nothing," Willa corrected. "You still have the land, some horses, your skills, and now you have me. That is more than nothing." "Why did you answer my advertisement?" Zachary asked. "A woman as capable as you could have made a life for yourself in Boston. Why come all the way out here to marry a stranger?" Willa considered her answer carefully. "I was alone. I had work. I had a room to sleep in, but I did not have a life. Every day was exactly like the one before, sewing piecework for wealthy women who looked through me as if I did not exist. I wanted something more. A home, a partner, a purpose. Your letters talked about building something lasting, creating a legacy. That appealed to me more than anything else could have. Even now, even seeing all this, especially now," Willa said firmly. "Anyone can maintain something that is already built. Building from the ground up, that is where real satisfaction comes from. We are going to create something remarkable here, Zachary. I can feel it." He looked at her in the firelight, and Willa saw something shift in his expression, the guardedness fading slightly. "You can call me Zach. My friends do, and I suppose my wife should too." "Zach," Willa repeated, liking the way it felt on her tongue. "Then you should call me Willa, not Miss Zimmerman or Miss Lawson. We are partners in this." "Partners," Zach agreed, and they shook hands over the fire like business associates sealing a deal, though the warmth in his eyes suggested it meant something more. They slept that night in the shed, Willa on the bedroll and Zach on a pallet of salvaged blankets on the floor, maintaining a respectful distance despite being newlyweds. Willa lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Nevada night and wondering what she had gotten herself into. But underneath, the uncertainty was a thread of excitement, the sense that her life was finally beginning in earnest. Morning came early, announced by roosters from a neighboring ranch and the gray light of dawn filtering through gaps in the shed walls. Willa rose to find Zach already awake, building up the fire and setting coffee to boil. His bandaged hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the injuries, and she made a mental note to change those dressings after breakfast. "I have been thinking," Zach said as they ate a simple meal of biscuits and jam. "We should make a list of priorities and tackle them systematically. If we try to do everything at once, we will just exhaust ourselves and accomplish nothing." "Agreed," Willa said. "What do you think should come first?" They spent the next hour planning, using a piece of salvaged slate and chalk to sketch out their strategy. Weatherproofing the shed was priority 1, followed by building a temporary corral for the horses. Then they would begin work on a new barn, something smaller and more practical than what had been there before. The house would have to wait until spring, they decided, because they needed to focus on structures that would generate income. "I can start breaking horses again once I have a proper corral and barn," Zach explained. "That is where most of my income comes from. I buy wild or half-broke horses cheap, train them, and sell them for a profit. Good horses are always in demand, especially with the mines expanding and more people moving into the territory." "Then that is what we focus on," Willa agreed. "What can I do to help?" Zach studied her thoughtfully. "Honestly, having someone to help with the physical labor will make everything go faster. Building alone is hard, but I also noticed you said you are a seamstress. If you could make canvas covers for the corral fencing and shed walls, that would help tremendously. We cannot afford to buy everything we need. I can do that, Willa assured him. I will need canvas, thread, and a sturdy needle, but I can make whatever you need. They rode into Reno together that morning to purchase supplies, pooling their remaining money carefully. Willa selected canvas, thread, and sewing supplies while Zach bought lumber, nails, and other building materials. They also stopped at the land office where Zach officially added Willa's name to the property deed, a gesture that surprised and touched her. "It is your land too now," he said simply. "We are building this together." Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm of work. Willa proved to be as capable as she had claimed, learning quickly how to measure and cut lumber, how to drive nails straight, how to mix mortar for the forge repairs. Her hands, already calloused from years of sewing, adapted to the new demands. She worked alongside Zach from dawn until dusk, and in the evenings she sewed by firelight, creating canvas windbreaks and waterproof covers. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their past lives, their hopes for the future. Willa learned that Zach had nearly died of fever his first year in Nevada, that he had a talent for gentling even the wildest horses, that he loved the open spaces of the West more than anything. Zach discovered that Willa had educated herself by reading every book she could borrow, that she had a wry sense of humor, that she was stronger than she looked. The shed slowly transformed into livable quarters. Willa sewed curtains from spare fabric to create privacy, fashioned cushions from canvas stuffed with dried grass, organized their meager possessions into some semblance of order. Zach built a proper stove from salvaged materials and river stones, added shelving, repaired the roof. It was still primitive, but it began to feel like a home. 2 weeks after Willa's arrival, they finished the temporary corral and brought in the horses that had survived the fire. Willa watched as Zach worked with them, his voice calm and steady, his movements patient and sure. She could see why he had built his reputation on this skill. Even the most skittish horse seemed to respond to him, settling under his gentle but firm guidance. "You have a gift," she told him that evening as they groomed the horses together. "I have never seen anyone work with animals like that." "My father taught me young," Zach said, running a brush along the gray gelding's flank. "He always said horses are honest. They do not lie or cheat or pretend to be something they are not. You earn their trust or you do not, simple as that." "Is that why you chose this life? For the honesty of it?" "Partly," Zach admitted. "I also like building something with my own hands, seeing the direct results of my labor. In my father's world, you could work yourself to death and still lose everything to weather or chance. Here, if I am smart and work hard, I control my own destiny. Or I thought I did before the fire." "You still do," Willa said firmly. "The fire was bad luck, but look at what we have accomplished already. In 2 weeks, we have created a stable home base and working facilities. Imagine what we can do in 2 months or 6. Zach smiled at her, and Willa felt warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the late afternoon sun. Over the past 2 weeks, her feelings toward her husband had deepened beyond the initial determination to make their arrangement work. She found herself noticing small things about him. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the competence of his hands even with the injuries healing, the sound of his laugh, rare but genuine. She wondered if he felt the same pull toward her, or if she was just a convenient partner in his eyes. That night, as they prepared for bed, Zach hesitated before going to his usual pallet on the floor. "Willa, I have been meaning to talk to you about our sleeping arrangements. We are married, and we have been sharing this space for 2 weeks now. I do not want you to think I do not find you attractive or that this marriage is not real to me. I just wanted to give you time to adjust, to know me better before we became fully husband and wife." Willa's heart hammered in her chest. She had been wondering about this too, confused by Zach's distance. "I appreciate your consideration," she said carefully. "But I also wonder if you are keeping your distance because you are not sure you want me as a true wife, or if you are waiting for me to regret staying and leave." "Neither," Zach said quickly. "I am giving you the choice. This was not the marriage you signed up for. You deserve the chance to decide if this is really what you want, if I am really who you want without pressure." Willa crossed the small space between them and placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating as fast as her own. "I made my choice when I got off that stagecoach and decided to stay. I have made it again every day since, every time I choose to work beside you, to build this life with you. I do not need more time to know that I want this marriage to be real in every sense, unless you do not want that." "I want that," Zach said, his voice rough with emotion. "I have wanted that since the day you stood in the ashes and told me you were staying. You are the bravest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I think I am falling in love with you." "Then stop sleeping on the floor," Willa said, her own voice shaking slightly. "We are husband and wife. Let us act like it." Zach pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, it was not brief or chaste. It was deep and searching, full of promise and possibility. Willa melted into him, answering with her own passion, her own hope. That night, their marriage became real in every way that mattered, two people choosing each other despite impossible circumstances, finding warmth and connection in the midst of rebuilding their lives from ash. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Willa was hanging laundry outside the shed when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Zach emerged from the corral where he had been working, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle he kept nearby. But as the riders came into view, he relaxed slightly. "That is Marcus Reed and his sons from the neighboring ranch to the east," he told Willa quietly. "Good people, generally. Marcus Reed was a weathered man in his 50s, accompanied by two younger men who were clearly his sons. They dismounted with easy grace, the kind that came from a lifetime in the saddle. "Zachary," Marcus said with a nod, "heard about your fire. Sorry we did not come sooner, but we have been dealing with our own troubles. Some cattle went missing and we have been tracking rustlers." His eyes moved to Willa with open curiosity. "I see you have acquired a wife since the last time we spoke." "This is Willa," Zach said, moving to stand beside her. "My wife. Willa, this is Marcus Reed and his sons James and Paul. They run the cattle operation about 5 miles east of here." "Pleased to meet you," Willa said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Would you like some coffee? We do not have much to offer, but we can manage that." "We did not come for hospitality, though that is kind," Marcus said. "We came to offer help. A man loses his place to fire. His neighbors should step up. We have some extra lumber we can spare, and my boys could help with the heavy work of building a new barn. Cannot have you facing winter without proper shelter for your stock." Willa saw surprise and gratitude flash across Zach's face. "I appreciate that, Marcus. I have to admit, I have been wondering how I was going to manage the barn framing with just 2 of us. I can pay you back with work once I am back on my feet." "No payment needed," Marcus said firmly. "That is what neighbors do. Besides, my Rebecca would have my hide if she knew you were out here struggling and I did nothing." He glanced at Willa again. "My wife wanted to know if you might come for dinner sometime soon, Mrs. Lawson. She gets lonesome with just men around, and she has been wanting to meet the woman brave enough to marry this stubborn horse trainer." "I would like that very much," Willa said warmly. "Thank you for the kindness." The Reed men proved as good as their word. Over the next several weeks, they arrived most mornings to help with the barn construction. With their assistance, the work progressed at an astonishing rate. Walls went up, rafters were secured, a new roof took shape. Willa worked alongside them, learning as she went, her respect for the physical demands of ranching growing daily. She also became friends with Rebecca Reed, a warm woman in her early 50s who welcomed Willa like a long-lost daughter. Rebecca taught her about preserving food for winter, about managing a ranch household, about the rhythms and demands of life in this harsh but beautiful land. It was the kind of mentorship Willa had been missing since losing her own mother years ago. "You remind me of myself at your age," Rebecca said one afternoon as they worked together in her kitchen, putting up preserves. "I came west as a young bride too, scared half to death but determined not to show it. It is not an easy life, but it is a good one if you have the right partner." "How do you know if you have the right partner?" Willa asked, thinking of Zach and the complicated tangle of feelings in her heart. Rebecca smiled knowingly. "When you would rather face hardship with them than comfort without them, when their happiness matters as much as your own, when you trust them to catch you if you fall." She paused in her work to look at Willa directly. "I see the way your husband looks at you, dear. That man is in love. The question is, how do you feel about him?" "I think I love him," Willa admitted, saying the words aloud for the first time. "It feels too soon to be sure, but when I imagine leaving, going back to Boston or anywhere else, my heart rebels against the idea. This place, this life, him, it all feels right in a way nothing else ever has." "Then you have your answer," Rebecca said gently. "Love does not follow a schedule. Sometimes it grows slowly over years, and sometimes it strikes like lightning. Either way, if it is real, you honor it by holding on tight and weathering whatever storms come." By late October, the new barn was finished. It was smaller than the original but sturdily built, with enough space for a dozen horses and storage for hay and equipment. Zach stood looking at it the evening they completed it, Willa beside him, both of them tired but satisfied. "We did it," he said, wonder in his voice. "I honestly did not think we could pull this off, not this fast, not this well." "We had help," Willa reminded him, "and we worked hard. Both things matter." "I could not have done this without you," Zach said, turning to face her. "I want you to know that. When you first arrived, I thought you staying was a mistake, that you would regret it and leave as soon as you realized how difficult things would be. But you have never complained, never faltered. You have worked as hard as any man I have ever known, and you have brought something to this place beyond just labor." "What is that?" Willa asked softly. "Hope," Zach said simply. "You made me believe we could rebuild, that there was still something worth fighting for. You turned a disaster into a new beginning." He took her hands in his burned palms now healed enough that he no longer needed bandages. "I love you, Willa. I know we have only known each other for 6 weeks, but I am more certain of this than I have ever been of anything. You are my partner, my wife, and the best thing that has ever happened to me." Tears pricked Willa's eyes as she looked up at him. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you that first day when you tried to send me away because you thought you had nothing to offer, not realizing that your honesty and integrity were worth more than any material possessions. Every day since has only made me more certain." They kissed as the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the new barn standing proud behind them as a testament to what they could accomplish together. It was not the life Willa had imagined when she left Boston, but it was infinitely better. She had found not just a home, but a purpose, a partner, and a love deeper than she had ever dreamed possible. November brought the first real cold, and with it, a new challenge. Zach's herd of trained horses was small after the fire losses, which meant reduced income for the winter months. They needed to buy more young horses to train, but that required capital they did not have. Willa suggested using the rest of her savings, but Zach refused. "You have already given up so much," he said. "I will not take the last of your money." "It is our money now," Willa argued. "And it does no good sitting in a tin under the floorboards. Let us use it to invest in our future." They compromised, using half of Willa's remaining savings to purchase 3 wild Mustangs from a trader passing through Reno. The horses were magnificent if half feral, and Zach set to work immediately on gentling them. Willa watched, fascinated, as he used patience and consistency to win their trust, never rushing, never using force beyond what was necessary. "Can you teach me?" she asked one afternoon. "I want to understand what you do, not just watch it." Zach looked surprised but pleased. "It can be dangerous. These horses are not tame." "Neither was this ranch when I arrived," Willa pointed out. "I learn by doing, not observing. Please." So Zach began teaching her, starting with the basics of reading a horse's body language, understanding their fear responses, building trust through small interactions. Willa discovered she had an aptitude for it, perhaps because her own life had taught her about earning trust slowly and respecting boundaries. The horses responded to her calm consistency, and Zach praised her natural timing. "You are a natural," he said one day, watching her work with a young mare. "In another year you could be training horses yourself." "I like working with them," Willa admitted. "There is something peaceful about it despite the danger. They are honest, like you said. No hidden motives, no deception." Winter settled in earnest by mid-December, bringing snow that transformed the ranch into a different world. They had prepared as well as they could, stockpiling firewood, preserving food, ensuring the barn and shed were weathertight. The work slowed with the cold, but it did not stop. Horses still needed care, equipment needed maintenance, plans needed to be made for spring. They spent long evenings by the stove, Willa sewing or reading aloud while Zach repaired tack or carved new fence posts. Sometimes they simply talked, sharing thoughts and dreams, learning each other's minds as thoroughly as they had learned each other's bodies. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Zach brought up a subject that had clearly been on his mind. "I want to build you a real house come spring," he said. "Something proper with multiple rooms and glass windows. You deserve better than this shed." "This shed has been perfectly adequate," Willa replied, though she could not deny that the idea of a real house appealed to her. "But I would not object to more space, especially if we are planning to have children someday." Zach looked up sharply. "Are you saying you want children?" "Eventually, yes," Willa said. "Do you not?" "I do," Zach said, his voice warm with emotion. "I just was not sure if you did, given everything else we are dealing with. Building a ranch and a family at the same time seems ambitious." "Everything we do is ambitious," Willa pointed out with a smile. "Why should starting a family be any different?" They spent the rest of that evening discussing their future, making plans that stretched years ahead. A new house by midsummer, expansion of the horse training operation, eventually adding cattle or sheep to diversify their income. Children, multiple if they were blessed. A legacy built not just on land and livestock, but on love and partnership. Christmas came quietly, marked by a simple celebration with gifts they had made for each other. Willa presented Zach with a new shirt she had sewn, carefully fitted to his measurements and embroidered with his initials. Zach gave her a jewelry box he had carved from salvaged wood, lined with soft fabric, its lid decorated with an intricate pattern of horses running free. "It is beautiful," Willa breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "You made this." "My father taught me woodworking before he died," Zach explained. "I have not done much of it since coming west, but I wanted to make you something special, something that would last." They attended Christmas service in Reno with the Reeds and other neighboring families, and Willa felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced in Boston. These people knew their story, knew about the fire and the rebuilding, and they treated Willa and Zach as valued members of the community. Several people went out of their way to welcome her, and Marcus Reed made a point of publicly praising their hard work and resilience. "You two are an example to all of us," he said during the community dinner after the service. "You faced catastrophe and did not give up. You worked together and accepted help when it was offered. That is what makes this territory great, people like you." Willa felt her cheeks flush with pleasure at the praise, but more than that, she felt gratitude for the community they had found. She had left Boston feeling alone in the world, but here in Nevada, she had discovered that family was not just about blood relations, but about the connections you chose to forge. The new year of 1883 arrived with brutal cold and heavy snow. For nearly a week, they were trapped in the shed, venturing out only to care for the horses and perform essential tasks. It was cramped and occasionally frustrating, but it also brought them closer. They played cards, told stories, made love with the stove burning hot to keep the cold at bay. Willa discovered that there was something intensely romantic about being snowbound with the man she loved, the rest of the world temporarily unreachable. When the weather finally broke in mid-January, they emerged to find 2 feet of snow covering everything. It took days to dig out paths to the barn and corral, to ensure the horses had adequate food and water. But they worked together with practiced efficiency, their partnership now so natural that they often communicated without words, each knowing what needed to be done and simply doing it. February brought warmer weather and the first signs of spring approaching. It also brought unexpected news. Willa woke one morning feeling queasy, a sensation that persisted for several days. At first, she attributed it to something she ate, but when the nausea began appearing specifically in the mornings, she realized what it likely meant. "I think I might be pregnant," she told Zach one evening, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I am not certain yet, but the signs are there." Zach stared at her, his expression shifting from surprise to wonder to pure joy. "Are you serious? We are going to have a baby, probably," Willa confirmed. "I will know for sure in another few weeks, but it seems likely." Zach pulled her into his arms, holding her gently as if she had suddenly become fragile. "This is the best news. We need to tell Rebecca Reed. She will know what you need, how to prepare. And we need to build that house sooner rather than later. You cannot have a baby in this shed." "We have months yet," Willa laughed, though she was touched by his immediate concern. "But yes, a house would be good, and I would like Rebecca's advice. I know nothing about childbirth or infant care." Rebecca was delighted when they shared the news, immediately taking Willa under her wing with advice and practical assistance. She gave them baby clothes her own children had worn, explained what supplies they would need, and promised to be there for the birth when the time came. She also gently but firmly told Zach that Willa needed to reduce her workload, especially the heavy physical labor. "I know she is capable," Rebecca said when Zach tried to protest that Willa would not want to be coddled. "But carrying a child takes a toll on the body. She needs to rest more, eat well, and avoid situations where she could be injured. The ranch work can wait. The baby cannot." Zach took Rebecca's advice to heart, perhaps too much so. He began insisting that Willa rest constantly, refusing to let her help with any but the lightest tasks. Willa appreciated his concern but found herself growing frustrated with the restrictions. "I am pregnant, not sick," she finally said, after he prevented her from helping repair a fence. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while continuing to work. I am not going to break. I know, Zach said, running his hand through his hair in frustration. I just worry. If something happened to you or the baby because I let you work too hard, I would never forgive myself. Then we need to find a balance, Willa said gently. I will not do anything dangerous or overly strenuous, but I need to stay active and useful. Sitting idle all day will drive me mad. Trust me to know my own limits. They reached a compromise, with Willa taking on tasks like bookkeeping, equipment maintenance, and light animal care while Zach handled the heavy construction and horse training. It worked well, allowing Willa to feel productive while addressing Zach's concerns about her safety. As spring arrived in earnest, they began work on the new house. This time, they had help from the start, with Marcus Reed and his sons joining the effort along with several other neighbors who had heard about the pregnancy and wanted to contribute. The community barn raising tradition extended to house construction, and what might have taken Zach months to build alone went up in a matter of weeks. The house was not large by ranch standards, but to Willa, it seemed palatial compared to the shed. It had 3 rooms, a main living area with a kitchen space, a bedroom, and a smaller room that would serve as the nursery. There were real glass windows, a proper stone fireplace, and a wood floor instead of packed dirt. Willa cried when she saw it completed, overwhelmed by gratitude and joy. "This is really ours," she asked Zach as they stood together in the empty main room. We built it," Zach confirmed, wrapping his arm around her expanding waist. "With help from good neighbors, but yes, this is our home, a place for our family to grow." They moved in immediately, spending the next several days arranging their belongings and making the space truly theirs. Willa sewed curtains for the windows, made cushions for the chairs Zach built, organized the kitchen area with care. The nursery she left mostly empty, wanting to wait until after the baby arrived to set it up properly, but she did place the cradle Marcus Reed's sons had built as a gift in one corner, a symbol of the life soon to join theirs. Summer brought intense heat and hard work. The horse training business was thriving again, with Zach's reputation bringing in buyers from as far away as California. He had a dozen horses in various stages of training, and Willa helped with the gentler animals, finding that she genuinely enjoyed the work despite her growing belly making some tasks difficult. They had also begun raising chickens for eggs and meat, and Willa had planted a vegetable garden near the house. Every day brought new small improvements, the ranch slowly transforming from a basic operation to a thriving homestead. It was satisfying work, seeing the direct results of their efforts, knowing that everything they built would belong to their child and possibly future children. Willa's pregnancy progressed normally according to Rebecca, who checked on her regularly. By midsummer, her belly was round and prominent, and she felt the baby moving constantly. Zach was fascinated by the movement, spending long evenings with his hand on her stomach, marveling at each kick and roll. "I cannot believe there is a person in there," he said one night as they lay in bed. "A little person who is half you and half me, who will have their own personality and dreams in life." "It is rather miraculous when you think about it," Willa agreed. "I go back and forth between excitement and terror. What if I am not a good mother? What if I do something wrong?" "You will be an amazing mother," Zach said firmly. "You are patient and kind and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you." "And lucky to have you as a father," Willa added. "You are going to teach them so much about horses and ranching and how to work hard for what you want." In August, with Willa now heavily pregnant and the summer heat oppressive, they received word that a group of investors from San Francisco was coming through the area looking to purchase trained horses for their businesses. It was a significant opportunity, the kind that could provide income for months, but Zach was hesitant to leave Willa alone for the 2 days it would take to meet with them in Reno and conduct the sales. "You should go," Willa insisted. "Rebecca said I have at least another 3 weeks before the baby comes. This is too important to miss." "What if something happens while I am gone?" Zach worried. "What if the baby comes early?" "Then Rebecca will be here," Willa said practically. "I already talked to her and she said she would stay with me while you are away. You have worked too hard rebuilding this operation to miss this chance. I will be fine." Reluctantly, Zach agreed. He left for Reno with 6 trained horses, the best of his current stock, after extracting promises from both Willa and Rebecca that they would send someone for him immediately if the baby showed any signs of arriving early. Willa watched him ride away with mixed feelings, proud of what he had accomplished, but also nervous about being without him. Rebecca arrived within the hour, bringing her knitting and enough supplies to stay several days if necessary. "Men," she said with fond exasperation. "They think the world stops turning when they are not around. We will be perfectly fine." They spent that first day in pleasant companionship, Willa working in her garden while Rebecca preserved vegetables in the kitchen. They talked about everything and nothing, and Willa realized how much she valued this friendship, how Rebecca had become something like a mother to her over the past year. "I never thanked you properly," Willa said as they prepared supper that evening, "for everything you have done for us. The help with building, the advice, the friendship. I do not know how we would have managed without you and Marcus." "That is what neighbors do," Rebecca said warmly. "Besides, you and Zachary have brought new energy to this area. Watching you two rebuild from nothing, it reminded all of us why we came west in the first place, to build something meaningful with our own hands." That night, Willa woke suddenly with a sharp pain in her lower back. She lay still, wondering if it was just the normal discomfort of late pregnancy, but then another pain came, stronger this time. With a sinking feeling, she realized the baby had decided not to wait 3 more weeks after all. "Rebecca," she called out, trying to keep her voice calm. "I think it is time." Rebecca was instantly alert, moving into action with practiced efficiency. She sent one of Marcus's sons, who had been sleeping in the barn, to help with chores, riding for Reno to fetch Zach and the doctor. Then she returned to help Willa through what was shaping up to be a long labor. The hours that followed were the most difficult of Willa's life. The pains came in waves, each stronger than the last, until she was certain she could not endure another minute. Rebecca stayed by her side throughout, offering encouragement and practical assistance, her calm presence a lifeline in the storm of pain. "You are doing wonderfully," Rebecca kept saying. "Just breathe through it. Your body knows what to do." Dawn was breaking when Zach finally arrived, having ridden through the night after getting the message. He burst into the bedroom looking terrified, his eyes immediately finding Willa's. "I am here," he said, taking her hand. "I am so sorry I was not here sooner." "You are here now," Willa managed between contractions. "That is what matters." The doctor arrived an hour later, examined Willa, and pronounced everything progressing normally if slowly. It was another 4 hours before the baby finally arrived, announced by a lusty cry that filled the small house. Willa fell back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure but filled with joy as Rebecca cleaned the baby and wrapped it in soft blankets. "You have a son," Rebecca said, placing the squirming bundle in Willa's arms. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Willa looked down at the tiny face, the dark hair, the features that were somehow already so familiar. Her son. Their son. She felt tears streaming down her face as she looked up at Zach, who was staring at the baby with an expression of such wonder and love that it made her heart ache. "We have a son," she whispered. "Can you believe it?" "He is perfect," Zach said, carefully touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "You are perfect. You are both perfect." He leaned down to kiss her forehead gently. Thank you for this, for everything. I love you so much." They named him Zachary Theodore Lawson, Theodore after Willa's father. Little Theo, as they immediately began calling him, proved to be a demanding but delightful baby. He nursed well, slept in reasonable stretches, and seemed to study the world around him with serious dark eyes. Willa fell in love all over again, not with Zach this time, but with this tiny person they had created, marveling at every sound and expression. Zach proved to be a devoted father, spending every free moment with his son, learning how to change nappies and soothe crying and coax smiles. Watching her husband with their baby, Willa felt her heart expand with a joy she had not known was possible. This was what she had been searching for when she left Boston, this sense of complete belonging, of being part of something greater than herself. The fall of 1883 brought new challenges as they adjusted to life with an infant while maintaining the ranch. Willa learned to nurse the baby while reviewing accounts, to soothe him to sleep while supervising the evening meal preparation, to function on interrupted sleep, and still remain reasonably pleasant. It was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. The ranch continued to prosper. Word of Zach's skill with horses had spread, and buyers regularly sought him out. They were able to hire a young ranch hand named Peter to help with the daily labor, giving Zach more time to focus on the skilled work of horse training and giving Willa more time with the baby. Their income stabilized and then grew, enough that they were able to start saving for future expansion. By the time Theo's first birthday arrived in August of 1884, the ranch bore almost no resemblance to the devastated property Willa had first seen 2 years earlier. The house and barn were solid structures designed to last for generations. The corrals were well maintained and functional. The herd of horses was healthy and valuable. The garden produced abundant vegetables. The chickens provided eggs and meat. It was a thriving operation built by two people who refused to give up. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is our life," Willa said one evening as they sat on the porch they had added to the house that spring, watching Theo toddle around the yard under Peter's watchful eye. 2 years ago, I was a lonely seamstress in Boston, and you were standing in the ashes of your dreams. Now look at us." "Look at us indeed," Zach agreed, pulling her close. "I think about that day often when you stepped off that stagecoach and saw the devastation. You could have left. You should have left, but you stayed and changed everything." "We changed everything," Willa corrected. "Neither of us could have done this alone, that is the whole point. We built this together from the ground up, ashes to abundance." "Ashes to abundance," Zach repeated thoughtfully. "I like that. That should be the name of this place, Abundance Ranch." "Abundance Ranch," Willa tried the name out and smiled. "Yes, that is exactly what we have built." Over the next few years, life continued to improve and expand. They added cattle to their operation, diversifying their income and using the grazing land more efficiently. Willa discovered she had a talent for managing the financial side of the business, keeping meticulous records and negotiating better prices for their stock. Zach's reputation as a horse trainer grew to the point where he could command premium prices for his animals. Their family grew as well. In the spring of 1886, Willa gave birth to a daughter they named Virginia Rose, a delicate child with Willa's light hair and Zach's gray eyes. 2 years later, another son arrived, Christopher James, robust and cheerful from birth. The house that had seemed so spacious when first built now rang with the sounds of children playing, and Zach began planning an addition for when the children got older and needed more space. The community around them evolved too. More families moved into the area as Nevada continued to grow, and Reno expanded into a proper city with schools, churches, and businesses. The Lawsons became respected members of the community, known for their hard work, integrity, and willingness to help neighbors in need, just as they had been helped. Marcus and Rebecca Reed remained close friends, watching Willa and Zach's family grow with pleasure. Marcus often joked that his only regret was that his own children were too old to marry the Lawson children when they grew up. But he was clearly pleased to see the legacy of cooperation and community that was developing in the region. "You two started something important when you rebuilt from that fire," he told them at a community gathering celebrating Nevada's admission to statehood anniversary. "You showed everyone that setbacks do not have to be endings, that hard work and partnership can overcome almost anything. Other families have taken inspiration from your story." Willa and Zach exchanged glances, both slightly embarrassed by the praise but also proud of what they had accomplished. Their story had become somewhat legendary in the area. The mail-order bride who arrived to find only ashes and stayed to build an empire. The determined rancher who accepted help and rebuilt stronger than before. As the 1880s drew to a close, Abundance Ranch was thoroughly established as one of the more successful operations in the region. They employed several ranch hands year-round and hired additional help during busy seasons. Their horses were sought after throughout Nevada and into California. Their cattle herd was healthy and profitable. Most importantly, their family was thriving. Theo was now a serious 8-year-old who followed his father everywhere, already showing aptitude with horses that suggested he would follow Zach into the training business someday. Virginia was 6, a thoughtful child who loved helping her mother in the garden and with the household accounts, already demonstrating the same practical intelligence that had served Willa so well. Christopher was 4, pure mischief and energy, keeping everyone entertained with his antics. On a warm evening in September of 1889, exactly 7 years after Willa had first arrived, they sat together on the porch after the children had been put to bed. Willa leaned against Zach's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him, marveling as she often did at how far they had come. "Do you ever regret it?" Zach asked quietly. "Choosing to stay that day, taking a chance on a stranger in a burned-out ranch?" "Not for a single moment," Willa replied honestly. "That was the day my real life began. Everything before was just marking time, waiting for something without knowing what I was waiting for. You, this place, our family, this is what I was meant for." "I feel the same way," Zach said. "The fire was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it brought me you, and you brought me everything else. Our partnership, our family, this life we have built. I would go through it all again if it meant ending up here with you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Willa thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, all the challenges overcome, all the joys discovered. She thought about the young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach with nothing but determination and a carpetbag, and the defeated man standing in the ashes of his dreams. They had been strangers then, brought together by circumstance and desperation. Now they were a family, partners in every sense, bound by love and shared experience and the life they had built together from nothing. The ranch that had once been nothing but ash and ruin now teemed with life and promise. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibilities. "I love you," Willa said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "Thank you for taking a chance on a crazy woman who did not know when to give up." "I love you too," Zach replied, kissing the top of her head. "Thank you for being crazy enough to stay." Inside the house, one of the children called out in sleep, and Willa rose to check on them. Zach followed, as he always did, because that was what partners did. They faced things together, whether it was rebuilding a ranch, raising a family, or simply soothing a child's nightmare. As Willa settled Virginia back to sleep, smoothing the hair from her daughter's face, she felt Zach's presence behind her, solid and reassuring. She thought again about that first day, about the choice she had made to stay despite every sensible reason to leave. It had been the best decision of her life. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. There were difficult winters and abundant summers, lean times and prosperous ones, illnesses survived and losses mourned. Through it all, Willa and Zach faced everything together, their partnership only growing stronger with time. By the mid-1890s, their children were growing into capable young people. Theo, now in his teens, had become an accomplished horse trainer in his own right, working alongside his father with natural skill and patience. Virginia helped her mother manage the household and ranch accounts, showing a head for business that suggested she might take over that aspect of the operation someday. Christopher was learning animal husbandry and proving to have a particular affinity for cattle ranching. The ranch had expanded significantly, now encompassing over 1,000 acres and employing a dozen full-time workers. They had built additional barns, expanded the house to accommodate their growing children, and established Abundance Ranch as one of the premier horse training operations in Nevada. Buyers came from as far away as Texas and Oregon to purchase their stock. But for all their material success, what Willa treasured most were the small moments. Breakfast with her family around the large table Zach had built, watching Zach teach their children the skills his father had taught him, quiet evenings on the porch after a long day's work, the certain knowledge that she was loved and valued. She sometimes thought about that mail-order bride advertisement she had answered all those years ago, the simple listing that had changed her life forever. Zach had been seeking a partner to help build a life in Nevada, and she had been searching for a place to belong. Neither of them could have imagined then where that connection would lead, the depth of love they would discover, the family they would create, the legacy they would build. "You remember what you told me that first day?" Zach asked one evening as they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. The children were staying overnight with the Reeds, giving them rare time alone. "When I tried to send you back to Boston. I told you I came to marry you and help build a life together, and the fact that we had to rebuild from nothing did not change that," Willa recalled. "I told you I was determined and done running from difficult situations." "Best words anyone ever spoke to me," Zach said, raising his glass to her. "You were determined, all right, determined enough for both of us when I had lost my determination. You saved more than just the ranch that day, Willa. You saved me." "We saved each other," Willa corrected gently. "You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. You taught me that I was strong enough to face anything, capable of more than I had ever imagined. We built this life together, remember? Neither of us could have done it alone." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, each touch and kiss a reaffirmation of their bond. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Willa felt profound gratitude for the life they had built, the love they shared, the family they had created. As the new century approached, bringing with it changes and modernization that would transform the West, Abundance Ranch remained a constant. It was more than just a successful business operation. It was a home built on love and partnership, a legacy created from ashes and determination, a testament to what two people could accomplish when they refused to give up on each other or their dreams. Willa and Zach grew older together, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes from years of squinting into the sun and smiling at their children. But their love remained as strong as ever, perhaps stronger for having been tested and proven through countless challenges. Their children eventually began families of their own. Theo married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring county and started his own horse training operation on land his parents gave him as a wedding gift. Virginia married a lawyer from Reno who appreciated her business acumen and supported her involvement in managing Abundance Ranch. Christopher took over the cattle operation, expanding it and introducing new breeding techniques he had learned from agricultural journals. Willa and Zach became grandparents multiple times over, delighting in the next generation while slowly stepping back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch. They remained active and involved, but they also took time to simply enjoy the fruits of their decades of labor, to travel occasionally, to pursue hobbies they had never had time for before. On the 20th anniversary of Willa's arrival, they stood together at the spot where the original house had burned, now marked by a small garden Willa had planted years ago. The ranch spread around them in all directions, prosperous and thriving, home to their children and grandchildren, a monument to everything they had built together. 20 years, Zach said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I was standing in these ashes, thinking my life was over, and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever. Both things are true, Willa replied, taking his hand. Time is funny that way. But I would not change a single moment, even the difficult ones. They made us who we are. The mail-order bride who stayed when anyone sensible would have left, Zach teased gently. The stubborn rancher who tried to send away the best thing that ever happened to him, Willa teased back. They laughed together, the easy laughter of two people completely comfortable with each other. Then they walked back to the house, hand in hand, ready to enjoy a family dinner with 3 generations gathered under the roof Zach had built and Willa had made into a home. The years continued their steady march. Willa and Zach aged into their 50s and 60s, their children fully grown and established, their grandchildren growing up strong and capable. Abundance Ranch remained a family operation, with different family members contributing their skills and energy to its continued success. They never forgot where they had started, though. The story of the fire and the mail-order bride who stayed became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The lessons of that time, about perseverance and partnership and refusing to give up when things looked darkest, became part of the family's values, passed down like precious heirlooms. In their later years, Willa and Zach spent quiet days together, enjoying the peace they had earned. They still helped with the ranch when needed, but mostly they enjoyed their grandchildren, tended Willa's gardens, and simply appreciated each other's company. Their love had only deepened with time, seasoned by decades of shared experience, strengthened by countless acts of devotion large and small. "We did good," Zach said one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sun set over land they had nurtured for over 4 decades. "Look at all this. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch, this life. We did real good." "We did," Willa agreed, leaning into his embrace. "We took ashes and built abundance. We took 2 lonely people and created a family. We took a disaster and turned it into a legacy. I would say we did very good indeed." "I love you, Willa Lawson," Zach said, the same words he had spoken countless times over the decades, but always with sincerity. "Best decision I ever made was accepting your crazy determination to stay." "I love you too, Zachary Lawson," Willa replied. "Best decision I ever made was getting off that stagecoach and choosing you, choosing us, choosing this life." As darkness fell and stars emerged above Abundance Ranch, they sat together in comfortable silence. Two people who had found in each other everything they needed. Their story had started with fire and destruction, with a desperate mail-order bride and a defeated rancher standing in the ashes of his dreams. But it had become so much more than that, a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of determination, partnership, and refusing to give up even when everything seemed lost. The ranch would continue for generations after them, their children and grandchildren carrying forward the legacy they had built. But the true legacy was not the land or the horses or the prosperous operation. It was the love story at the heart of it all, the proof that two people working together could overcome anything, could build abundance from ashes, could create something beautiful and lasting from the ruins of disaster. Willa and Zach lived long lives, blessed with health and happiness, surrounded by family, and the results of their decades of hard work. When they eventually passed, years apart because neither could imagine life without the other for long, they left behind not just a successful ranch, but a model of what marriage and partnership could be at their best. Their graves sat side by side on a hill overlooking Abundance Ranch, marked by simple stones that bore their names and a single inscription chosen by their children. Together, they built abundance from ashes. It was a fitting epitaph for two people who had taken the worst day of their lives and transformed it into the beginning of something extraordinary. And on warm summer evenings, when the wind blew just right across the Nevada landscape, the family still gathered on that same porch where Willa and Zach had spent so many hours together. They told the story again, the legend of the mail-order bride who arrived to find only ashes and the determined rancher who tried to send her away. They talked about how their ancestors had refused to give up, had worked together to build not just a ranch but a legacy of love and partnership. The story always ended the same way, with the reminder that the greatest treasures in life often come from the worst circumstances, that love is not about perfect beginnings, but about choosing to stay and build together no matter what challenges arise. Willa and Zach had proven that truth beyond doubt, their lives a testament to the power of determination, partnership, and love strong enough to transform ashes into abundance that would last for generations. Their great-grandchildren played in yards their ancestors had reclaimed from ruin. Their legacy lived on not just in the prosperous ranch, but in the values they had embodied. Never give up, work together, build something meaningful, love deeply and truly. From the ashes of one man's disaster and one woman's courage to stay, had grown a family empire built on the firmest foundation possible. The enduring love of two people who chose each other every single day for the rest of their lives.